and Trump hold hour-long call on Iran-Ukraine conflicts. U.S. may take some oil sanctions off. Trump. Iraq PM tells U.S. Iraqi airspace must not be used against neighbors. U.S.-Israel differences emerge over Iran war strategy. Report. Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. President Donald Trump have held a phone conversation to discuss major international issues. According to the Kremlin, the call was initiated by President Trump and lasted about 1 hour. Kremlin aide Yuri Ushakov said the discussion focused on the ongoing conflict involving Iran and diplomatic efforts related to the war in Ukraine. During the call, Trump reaffirmed Washington's interest in ending the fighting between Russia and Ukraine and reaching a long-term settlement. President Putin thanked the United States for its mediation efforts and said Russia remains open to continued dialogue. The two leaders also exchanged views on the escalating conflict involving Iran. Putin briefed Trump on his recent conversations with Gulf leaders and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. Later, Trump described the discussion as a very good call, saying the two leaders talked about both the Iran war and the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Earlier in the day, Putin warned that continued fighting in the Middle East could disrupt global oil and gas supplies, especially due to the effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz. He said the conflict could affect Gulf oil production and lead to higher global energy prices, while adding that Russia would continue supplying oil and gas to its trusted partners. U.S. President Donald Trump has announced that Washington may temporarily lift oil sanctions on some countries. Speaking to reporters at his Doral property in Florida, Trump said the sanctions would be removed for now while the situation stabilizes. He added that the United States might not reimpose the sanctions in the future, depending on how developments unfold. Trump acknowledged that easing the restrictions could lead to higher oil prices, but said the increase so far has been smaller than he expected. Earlier, Russian investment envoy Kirill Dmitriev said Moscow is also discussing the possibility of easing sanctions on Russian oil with Washington. The discussions come amid rising tensions in the Middle East and concerns over global energy supplies. Iraq's Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani has told U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio that Iraq should not be used as a launch point for attacks in the ongoing Middle East war. According to reports, al-Sudani made the remarks during a phone call with Rubio, stressing the importance of respecting Iraq's sovereignty. He said Iraqi airspace, territory, and waters must not be used for military operations targeting neighboring countries or the wider region. The Iraqi Prime Minister also rejected any attempts to drag Iraq into the conflict and warned against violations of the country's airspace by any party. Since the war began, Iraq's airspace has seen heavy military activity, with fighter jets and missiles crossing the region. Iraq was drawn into the conflict early on, as strikes blamed on the United States and Israel targeted Iran-backed groups. In response, those groups have claimed attacks on U.S. military bases in Iraq and other parts of the region. Differences are beginning to emerge between the United States and Israel over the direction of the ongoing war with Iran. According to media reports, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has pushed for stronger military action against Iran and has welcomed Washington's involvement in the conflict. However, U.S. officials are reportedly more focused on preventing the war from escalating further, creating differences in strategy between the two allies. Reports also suggest that U.S. President Donald Trump has received conflicting advice from advisors, some of whom expected Iran to weaken quickly after the start of the military campaign. Instead, the conflict has lasted longer than anticipated, prompting discussions within the U.S. administration about how to manage the situation and possibly move toward ending the war. Israeli leaders, however, have signaled that they may want to intensify military operations against Iran. Observers also noted the unexpected cancellation of planned visits by Jared Kushner and U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff, though no official explanation was provided. Meanwhile, the conflict continues to escalate. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps rejected U.S. claims that its missile program had been largely destroyed. The group said it is continuing to deploy missiles in greater numbers, some carrying warheads weighing more than 1 ton. President Trump also warned that the United States would respond strongly if Iran attempts to block shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, a key global oil route. He said the U.S. would respond much harder if oil tankers were targeted in the strategic waterway.